Hello again, and welcome to the Mondays Kept Me Fat podcast. This is the health and weight loss show that will keep you started. Hey, losing weight, it's hard. Keeping it off, even harder. What's harder than losing weight or keeping weight off? Getting started and staying started. I'm Nurse Kevin, your host, and this week we're going to talk about the end. You can picture your start. You've said, I'll start how many times? Once we start taking steps toward the goal. But have you ever stopped for a moment to think about the end? How do you think of the end when it comes to weight loss and health goals? I mean, after all, what does that last step on our weight loss goals look like? And is there a last step? You've heard this saying before, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. It's a bit overused, a little bit cliche, but hey, it's spot on. Question, what's at the end of that 1,000 miles? Have you thought about it? Have you ever seen the end of that 1,000-mile journey? The one-step part, pretty easy thing in and of itself to kind of imagine. But the last step part, very difficult. There's 1,000 miles less the 2 steps between step number 1 and the last step. Last week, we sort of modified Stephen Covey's quote in his awesome book. We said, begin with the quit in mind. And this week, we want to stick with the original version, begin with the end in mind. Every start in your life has been motivated by one thing, your mental image of the end. We all have our start stories. We probably have more start stories than we have end stories. We're so prone to the quit that we've never really reached the end. And if you have reached the end, it's a feeling that's just unimaginable almost. The end is there. All you got to do is take the steps to get there. But it's really not that easy. Let me give you a story real quick. And you know I love stories. It helps bring things together. This is a story about the quit, the end, and the future. It's a story of my graduation when I was in nursing school. Now hang on. You'll probably be able to relate to this story in your own life. First day of college, English class. I was about to embark on a 4-year journey toward graduation, a job with benefits and a steady income. I was looking forward to this so much. My mental image of each semester at school was like these giant one steps toward my last semester, that last step before the end. That end was what I had sharply focused in my mind, graduation. Each semester was like a little mini 1,000-mile journey, starting with the syllabus and ending with the final exam. Done. I could picture the end in my mind, and it was my guiding moment to push me through every struggle I experienced during those 4 years. There was this one fellow that was in school with me. There was only 3 of us guys in my class back in those days. Nursing school was hard, and he and I would study periodically together. I kept picturing the future. As a matter of fact, I would take pictures at the pinning ceremonies of my upperclassmen, if you will, upper-class women, because most of those students were actually female. And I know that during the past 4 years, each and every one of them struggled with the same things that I was struggling with actually in the middle, in the midst of nursing school. They started with their first day of clinical, and they finally finished with their last day of clinical. There they were at their pinning ceremony, each one of these graduating student nurses, and I was there to photograph the event. I happened to be a photographer in another life, and my instructors asked me if I would photograph some of the ceremonies. I would try to capture the graduates' joy, their sense of accomplishments, their hopeful futures. And you know what? It was the easiest photography session I ever had. You could see and feel their excitement. There was no posing and no coaching any of these graduates to be joyful, have a feeling of accomplishment, and be hopeful for their futures. They were in their last step. They were so excited that you could almost touch that excitement hanging in the air. After that first semester, that friend of mine didn't show back up for the second semester. He was just gone. But there really is no way in this world. Years later, I had my own pinning ceremony. I had made it. I was in my future. I was at the last step. My mother's a nurse too. And to have my mother on that same stage with me, putting my pin on my lapel, wonderful moment. Never going to forget that. The next day was graduation, and we didn't waste any time. We left Louisiana in the broad daylight. We were off to Phoenix, Arizona. Job interviews were waiting and ready for us. Now, I say leaving Louisiana in the broad daylight. We left in the evening after graduation. It was getting dark. We were hungry. My wife and I pulled into the KFC. I know, KFC, not the diet food, but hey, they may serve baked chicken, but it's been so long since I've been there. I do know this, that original recipe was calling my name. I pulled up to the drive-thru, made my order, and then pulled through the drive-thru window. The KFC guy opened the window, and guess what? It was that guy. That guy that I haven't seen in a couple, 3 years, and here he was at the KFC off the I-20. He was the evening crew assistant manager. Now, you're sad, right? I know you are. I'm sorry. It is a sad story to think about because going through your mind right now is all the steps that I had taken on my journey to the end, to that last step of graduation. and all the steps that he did not take that he could have taken, because both of us found ourselves in our future. We found ourselves at the exact moment in time with completely different outcomes. He looked at me. He recognized me. I wasn't in my scrubs or anything. I was in just regular clothes. And he said, "Kevin, what are you doing?" Couldn't believe he remembered my name. I'm sorry to say I could not contain myself. Remember, I just walked this 1,000-mile journey. I was on my last step and I blurted it out. I just graduated from nursing school and I'm off to Phoenix for job interviews. He tried to hide it. Oh my gracious, he tried to hide it. All that time had gone by. All those steps had been stepped. And there I was at the end of my 1,000-mile journey, and he was still at the starting line trying to tie his shoes. Time is going to pass. It's going to come. It's going to go. What you do between that first step and that last step is going to make the difference of where you're going to be in your own personal future. Most of us know how it feels to lose some weight, and a lot of us really know how it feels to lose all the weight. And if you're still struggling, we also know how it feels to gain all that back. It's a defeated feeling. We have to retrek ground we've already hiked. But keep in mind, you know the steps to take. That first step, easy. Second step is easy because you've already done the first step. And eventually, on that trail that you're hiking again, you're going to see these mile markers pop up. You know how they have on those trails that are marked, mile number 1, mile number 2. Do you remember that movie Forrest Gump? Do you remember the running scene? Not the one where he was breaking out of his braces as he was running away from the bullies. I'm talking about the one where he decided he was going to run out of Alabama and he was going to run across the country. Got to one ocean, ran the other way to the other side of this country. Very inspirational. The guy never stopped for a haircut. He had this big bushy beard, all this long hair. You ever wondered why his red hat was still so red and not sun-bleached after a coast-to-coast run? He must have had some awesome shoes. They lasted for miles. Now, I'm being facetious. The problem with the one step, that single step, is we know how difficult all the other steps are going to be in the middle. Even though those middle steps are going to bring happiness, we know how we're going to struggle on those middle steps. The farther we get away from step number 1, the more we lose our motivation and we start to feel depressed and we start to feel that this isn't going to happen. And if we push beyond that and get to the other side, as we get closer to that last step, then we start to build emotion. And then you find those people unstoppable. My son and I do bicycle rides. And on those long distance bicycle rides, we're talking 30, 40 miles on gravel. My son is ready to go in the first 1/3 of the trip. He's almost unstoppable. It's the middle part, the part where he realizes that he's come so far, but he still has so much farther to go. And it starts to get him down. And he starts to complain more. And then once he gets past that, once he realizes that the end is closer than the start, then he's unstoppable. Sometimes he pushes beyond it and takes it to the next level. It's really impressive. Unlike riding a bicycle where you know where the end of the trail is going to be, you see it, it's there on the map, you get to it, you stop, you take your picture, share it on Facebook, and you go home. But unlike that dead end, line in the sand, your weight loss and health goals are very vague. They're gray. You don't see that line in the sand. Where is that last step on our 1,000-mile journey? Truth be known, there really isn't a last step. But hang on. Hold the phone. Don't stop listening yet. You're going to reach your goal. You're going to accomplish your 1,000-mile journey. You're going to look down and see a weight that is your goal weight. That's where you want to be. You're going to put on clothing one day that's going to fit in the size you imagine yourself fitting into. If your goals are realistic, you will reach them. Now, I stretched the tape, 5'10". That's how tall I am. I had a goal once of 199 pounds, done it. Had a goal of 175 pounds, done. The point is, on that last step of your 1,000-mile journey, you're going to have the body that you imagined. It's going to happen as long as you keep stepping. Once I reached that mid-170, that 175-pound goal, I knew that I could not stop. Because what does it mean to stop? It means to go back doing what I was doing before that caused me to gain all that weight, and I do not want to fall off that hill. That hill is huge. I think of my 1,000-mile journey as having been on a journey that is completely uphill. Yes, a 12% grade, 1,000 miles up the north side of a hill with a strong southern frog strangler bearing down on my efforts. If I didn't keep stepping, I'd have been blown off that hill. And you know what? At my last step at the top of the hill, if I don't keep stepping, I'm going to get knocked off the hill. Just because I've reached the top of the hill, I'd still have the risk of falling down to my starting weight and maybe even a bit more. If I look back up at this hill, if I were to fall and have to look back up, it would look so much bigger and so much more colossal than it did years ago when I looked up at it again for the first time. I know your 1,000 miles in front of you is huge. You have to keep thinking about one thing. You have to keep thinking about that last step, the end. You have to keep focused on that last step, the end. Do this for you. The last thing I'll mention is my end has produced the realization that I am loved. My wonderful family has not changed their affections for me one iota. My wife treats me the same as she did when I was heavy. My son treats me with the same respect and honor as he did before. Maybe now I can be around longer than I would have been when I was around. Get it? And I'll be honest with you, I don't feel worthy of such a high regard from any soul on earth. We all know why we don't deserve the love we receive in such colossal portions from our family. We treasure it and we embrace it. Your personal the end is right there. It's coming. It may seem like 1,000 miles away, but a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. The last step is there too. The first step, you're headed toward your last step. It's right there. Consider the reality of time and space. You can't get away from the fact that you have to move through the space, and that takes time. And when you find yourself meeting your future self, when you find yourself in the future, and the future is going to come whether you're ready or not, you're going to be standing there at that point just before the last step. Then, step. You've made it. Along that journey uphill, you're going to see mile markers. And they're going to come in the form of inspiring people. They're going to show up and they're going to say, "Are you losing weight?" Another mile marker will pass. "You look fantastic." And then another one, "Wow, you've come so far." Your weight loss and health are going to be a gift to those people who love you and whom you love. The only thing is, there'll be less of you to love. That's a pretty good deal though, right? Well, y'all, that's a wrap. Hey, we're done for this week. Next week, we're going to talk about the Green Decree. Yep, I have a story about a kid, a buffet line, and all you can eat. That's a two-parter, and we're going to start next Monday with that two-parter, and then the following Monday finishing up. The Green Decree episodes are going to be about good food and bad food, but hang on, you're going to be surprised at what I got to offer y'all. Okay, hey, listen, until we see each other next week, remember this. You got this. It's all you, but you still got it. Diets happen on Monday. Real change happens today.